Welcome to the Craft of Coaching podcast, where we dive into what it truly takes to become a skilled, confident life coach. I'm your host, Kate, head of the CLCC, or Certified Life Coach Collective, an ICF-accredited Level 1 coach training program. We combine courage, coaching, and community to offer you more than just a training program, but a life-changing experience where you use your own personal transformation as the learning ground for supporting your clients. On this podcast, we explore how you can use coaching skills to support your clients or expand your own growth, all grounded in evidence-based coaching practices. Learn more about our program and get free resources for becoming a life coach at teamclcc.com. And now, here's today's episode. Okay, so here we are, and we get to have today's episode of the Craft of Coaching podcast with not just one CLCC grad, but two CLCC grads. And this is my first time doing a 3-people podcast episode. And also, I'm prepping everyone to know that the 2 people with me today, Kim and Louise, both run their own podcast that they co-host. So now they get to be, they often interview each other or guests, and now they get to be on the other side of the mic, so to speak, being interviewed about their experience. So welcome to the Craft of Coaching podcast, Kim and Louise. I would love for people to start by getting to know you a little bit. So Kim, would you start us off telling us a little bit about who you be and what it is you help people with?
Sure. Well, if you really knew me, you'd know that I am a life and business alchemist. So I blend together energetics and strategic methodologies to support those that are creating social impact in the world. So that's leaders, team members, change makers, advocates, individuals who are on the front lines as well as behind the scenes of making the world a better place. And I do that through vision, helping them find a whole lot of clarity and then really listen back to themselves, because I believe in deconditioning all of the noise that we have somehow put upon ourselves to believe is ours, and give ourselves an opportunity to actually lead from the center of ourselves so that we can make that change that we know the world needs.
Oh, I hear radical self-trust all over that.
Yup.
Radical self-trust. All right. Beautiful. Thank you, Kim.
Yeah.
And Louise, how about you?
Yeah, I like to say, imagine a career coach and a doula walk into a bar, and and then it's just me. So yeah, I'm a career strategist. So I have a little bit different take on helping folks, especially in midlife, pivot into work that fits and feels good. Whatever a pivot looks like I'm not deciding what a pivot looks like, but for whatever reason, we get stuck sometimes, especially in midlife, trying to find our way into work that fits and feels good. And so I help people do that with confidence and clarity so that they're feeling really good about the second act or the third act or whatever act you want to call it. And as a menopause doula, I bring that into my work, helping women plus transition through perimenopause and menopause, because those two things collide and can get messy and really drain us. And so helping women plus find their way through that transition, especially when it comes to the world of work and our careers and how it impacts how we're showing up. So I help individuals in that space, but I also help very radical organizations who want to be menopause inclusive, who want to bring that conversation into the workplace, to help their leaders talk about menopause, to help their staff talk about menopause, and help their policies reflect that as well. So those are my spaces that I like to play and dabble.
Oh, such an important topic, and one that, raise my hand here in the pause, one that I'm so glad is being discussed more, because it literally is a health condition with how it hits. And not enough people think of it that way. Yeah. Okay. All right. So much excitement to have you both here, have you both finding your way to this. I'm actually kind of curious before we get into, I really want to talk about the podcast, but because of how beautifully you both just introduced yourselves, I know that something that Craft of Coaching listeners have often struggled with is feeling like, how do I talk about what I do? And what do I do if I thought I hit on it and then it turns out I want to do something else? And we'll be talking about pivots because you've done an important one with your podcast. But I love having examples. I think I know how you're going to answer this. So that's kind of where I'm going with this. I love having examples of coaches who are going to be like, yeah, I own it. This was not the first iteration of my coaching business. So I just want to check in with you, Kim, and check in with you, Louise, how you talk about yourself today. Was it the first way that you conceived of how you would be a coach?
Oh, no, not even the 20th way that I can say.
Because I really believe genuinely in the power of coaching, not just for one-on-one practices, but all the ways that coaching skills help with de-escalation, complicated relationships, with parenting, with navigating stress, with in the workplace. There's so many different ways that coaching skills can be applied, and not just to a one-on-one practice. And I think there are a lot of coaches that are out there that they try that first stab at developing a coaching business, getting a niche, getting a perspective. Here's how I'm going to hang out my shingle. And then if it doesn't work, or if they're kind of like, wait, I don't know if this feels right, they feel like coaching must not be for me. And I go, well, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater here. Coaching might still be for you, and you just need to tweak it a little bit. Do either of you care to share? I can edit this out later if both of you are like, but I'm wondering if either of you care to share what that process was like for you, of just in your personal coaching practices going, this felt good for 6 months, and then suddenly it doesn't quite align.
Well, it's interesting because the way I approach it now is very different than the way I approached it when I first started. But for me now, it's about experimenting, right? Mm-hmm. When we launch a business or we launch a product or a program, we start off very beta testing, right? We're assuming a lot of things. And when we can get out and at least for myself, get out of our way and just experiment a little, we get so much information back. How do we use that information to change, to pivot, to grow? Like a pivot doesn't have to be, like I even said in my intro, it doesn't have to be 180 degrees. It's about refining, and it's about slowly changing those things. And for me, I used to come up against that wall very early in my business. And much like you said, throw up my hands and go what's happening? What's going on? Because what I thought it was going to be wasn't what it was at all. But now it's this reiterative approach, right? Over and over, try new things, right? Kim, you do the same thing in your business too.
Oh my gosh, I do it daily. I feel like it's how I operate. I'm always getting new ideas. I'm always wanting to change something. I'm like, oh no, that didn't work. This might be better this way. And I used to think that meant something really bad about me. I used to think that meant I didn't know how to run a business. I clearly could run somebody else's business, but I couldn't run my own business. I don't know what I'm doing, right? All the negative self-talk. But what I realized, I sat down and I started paying attention to organizations, both for-profit and nonprofit organizations that I thought were successful. And I said, what I realized was even some of the most successful organizations out there are constantly redefining themselves. Mm-hmm. In message, in product placement, in methodology, it's constantly. And if we're trying to find that one thing that we're going to, right, it's just like finding the one career that you have for the next 30 years, you're going to be stagnant. Mm-hmm. You're not going to have growth, and you're going to become irrelevant, honestly, over time. So allowing for yourself to realize what works for you as a person, what works for your business as an ecosystem, and then what works for the collective, and how you meet the collective in any given moment, because that also shifts. It's all important. And so it's a dialogue, and I see it as a dialogue constantly between those three. It's me, the ecosystem of my business, and the collective. What needs to shift?
Yeah, there's such a radical reframing that I see happening that I think really started with maker culture 20 years ago. And it continues. And I think it's starting to get into corporate more now, of like seeing our career development and even an organization and their product offerings as like a living, breathing organism. And none of us are the same person that we were 10 or 20 years ago. There are some threads that at the core might stay the same, but things shift, they change, they grow. We realize maybe we're going to keep the product, but we're going to change how we do the hierarchy of power behind the scenes. There's just all kinds of things like that I think are important. And I would say what I hear in what you share, Kim, is a real adoption. The old story might have been, I got to figure it out and then follow the steps. And then now a real adoption of, this is actually the part of like working for myself that is fun.
Yeah,
like there's
totally.
no rules. It's freedom. It's liberation. Is it scary sometimes? Yeah, of course. But like, it's also scary when you follow the playbook, so to speak, and you're at the mercy of corporate layoffs. That's also scary.
Yeah.
It's a lot. You're not going to do it. So
I think that's scarier because you've already given away so much of yourself and your power to that organization, and having the ability to say, okay, this is mine. I don't know what's next.
Mm-hmm.
How do I adapt to what's happening versus oh gosh, I put myself into somebody else's system for me to respond to. So,
yeah. Also important is to avoid sunk cost bias, which I think this is part of the reason in CLCC why I tell people, look, just go with a Squarespace template. Do not go hire a graphic designer branding consultant for $10,000 to build out your whole brand when you are a brand new coach, because you're going to change it up. And that sunk cost bias into the time and effort spent into a brand. If someone adopts the narrative of like, oh, I've already put so much effort, time, money, etc., into this path, I have to stick with it, even though it doesn't feel true anymore, that gets really hard. And so now I want to kind of talk about that pivot, because you two had created a successful, lovely podcast. And then you decided to shift your podcast. So first, I want to get into how you first conceived this podcast. You're co-hosting it. What's that like? What was the original podcast about? How'd you guys decide on some of the like admin stuff? Like, who's going to pay to host this? Who's going to handle scheduling or editing, right? So that it's equitable. What was the origination story for your original podcast like?
Well, the credit goes to you, actually. So
me or Kim?
Yeah,
you.
You, Kate. You.
Oh, okay.
So I didn't even know that.
This is news to me. I am learning it live here. Okay, all right. It's good that the credit is going to me, and rather than, well, Kate, it turns out you messed something up, and we're like, we're not going to do that. All right, I'm here. Good, great.
Yeah. So this is actually, I think, our third version of a podcast. And so our very first version was blossomed out of our CLCC mastermind. And so there was actually 5 of us that decided we were going to co-host a podcast, which is insane when you think about it. But we didn't know any
schedules.
We didn't know any different. And so it was our mastermind group after our CLCC training that we had all decided we were going to do this. And so we took everything and split it 5 ways. Somebody was in charge of the graphics, somebody was in charge of the recording, somebody was in charge of the scheduling, all of those things. We all split it up, and we did it for what we would call a season. Yeah. So I think we put out 26 episodes.
Yeah. I know we did it for a year. I thought we hit 50, but maybe it was
not. I don't know. See, it's all a blur. And
we're almost 200 episodes into our new one, so it is a blur.
But we learned so much. We learned who we are in a group. We learned what we liked to do, what we didn't like to do. We learned how to communicate with a staff that big, with all co-hosts. We learned how to negotiate, collaborate on a very high level. And when we decided to wrap that up and close the doors on that, Kim and I were just in love with podcasting. And we were like, how do we carry this forward, or what's the next chapter? And that's when we started Your Kick-Ass Career.
Yeah. And so what we noticed was that Louise and I continued to play in the same space. And that was workplace development, leadership development. And we had slightly different angles on it, but we were working very much with similarly aligned client bases. And so the conversations we were having were towards this idea of leadership development. And as we talked about with the pivot, as our businesses began to pivot, is when we started to think about what could be next. But to just stay for a second with Your Kick-Ass Career, it was a conversation. We already knew what our strengths were. My husband and I had a podcast production company years ago, so I had the technical know-how. And so Louise and I sat down and said, okay, this is what Louise has enjoyed doing or wants to learn more about. Here's what I enjoy doing or what I don't want to do anymore. And then we kind of just parsed out who would do what. We've worked through different iterations of budgets over the years, of saying this is how it's getting paid out, who reimburses whom. And we talked about, do we have to have a shell company? We've decided not to. I know some others that co-host actually have a shell company between them. We chose to just do reimbursements between ourselves. And so it's been through a lot of very direct conversation, and a lot of experimenting with what do we like, what do we don't like, what are each of us individually not liking, what do we collectively not like, or what do we collectively like, and then how do we parse things up so that it feels equitable. And if it doesn't, or if one of us is feeling stretched thin, we always have a conversation about it. And those conversations are not always easy. Mm-hmm. Like, there's no glitter happening on here, glitter on poop happening here. This is real, honest to goodness, hard conversations with a lot of love and a lot of candor.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I have to pull a thread from here. Mm-hmm. People are like, the coaching market is so saturated. People, what do I do? There are other people who want to work with the same people that I want to work with. And I just have to highlight the power of what you two have created by deciding to choose collaboration and not competition. Like it just being like, yes, we serve some of the same people. Something I know I say in CLCC, and I know would be true for both of you, or I feel reasonably certain anyway, feel free to confirm or deny, is that stylistically, you two are different people. So even if you're wanting to serve the same group of people, you'll have a different stylistic approach with coaching. For those who are only listening to the audio, they're both nodding right now.
Yes,
yeah.
For sure.
And might intervene at a different moment, or see this is the moment when I want to interject a coaching question versus this is the moment where I want to mine something a little bit differently. And I have to speak into that because I just feel so intimately aware of the fears that coaches have about what do I do going into the marketplace, so to speak. What do I do if somebody else is already wanting to serve those people and serve them well? And the reality is you'll serve them differently because you're unique. Like, people can copy, certainly, but they can't be you. So it's just impossible really to copy in the truest sense.
Well, and collaboration is what builds your business. Quite honestly, it is. If you're trying to do this alone and thinking that you have this idea that this thing is mine, right? Mm-hmm. And I will go serve the world this way, you're going to be constricted by that belief. The more we collaborate, the more we open, the more we have conversations with people doing the same thing, the more we're able to actually create a larger footprint, a larger ripple, and more effect on the world, more impact on the world.
Yeah, I love it. Oh, love, love, love. Okay. So to continue the narrative, how did it come about that you two went, we have this one podcast that's been focused in this one direction all this time. How did you first get an inkling that something might need to be different? How did you know to trust it? And then how'd you make the change? I know that's 3 questions in one, but I'm kind of wanting, like, what was the seed that something needed to be different? How did you know I'm going to follow that rather than just like, it's like a Tuesday. Sometimes I want a different thing on a Tuesday. And then what action steps? How'd you do it?
Well, it starts with that, I call it crunchy feeling, right? Like for me, and I think individually, Kim and I came to these, like, we're not getting the same kind of joy out of the podcast. We're having great conversations, but we're not getting the same kind of joy we had when we first started. And so that's one of those very brave conversations that we had to have, is like somebody raised their hand first and said, like, this isn't serving me, never mind my business. This isn't serving me in a way that feels as joyful as it used to. Right? What about you? What are you thinking? What are you doing? And those are scary conversations, because it could have meant that I was putting my hand up or Kim was putting her hand up to say, like, we're done. Right?
Mm-hmm.
If we can't find some common ground, then like, we're not going to do something that's not enjoyable and brings fulfillment to us. And so it starts with a brave conversation for sure. But then it also starts with like non-judgment, right? Is to say, like, let's truly listen to each other and like, what isn't working? What is working? And what does that mean? And then we actually came together in person, even though we live in very different parts of the country. We found a common place, and we had a little like podcast business retreat where we hunkered down in an Airbnb for a weekend, and we hashed it out. So that we couldn't get interrupted by other things, that we were fully present for each other and for our podcast, whatever that looked like in that moment. And we didn't know what was going to happen at the end of the weekend. It could have been the last time we talked podcast at all.
Wow.
Yeah, it was pretty magical, because we actually started the process by talking about our businesses. We said, this is where I see my business for each of us going in the near future. And we used that as a catalyst to say, where do we want this to serve us? Is the podcast going to just be for joy and fun? And if so, are we talking about what's joyful and fun? Is the podcast going to serve our businesses in some way? If so, where's the bridge between our two businesses as we're building them in different directions and starting another? At that time, it was a fairly larger pivot for both of us. While we still both do leadership development. It's just from a very different lens. And so when we were starting to do that pivot, how did we see our businesses and where did we see the podcast fitting in? And so then having that conversation about what logistically made sense, how much time did we want to give? And then we got to the joy part, and the big dream part. And it was, who do we want to talk to? What kind of conversations do we want to have? Do we want to continue inviting people in, or do we want it to just be this juiciness between us? Mm-hmm. Because we love both. But it was allowing then ourselves to go back into that place of experimentation and play, and not taking any of this too seriously. Like, yes, we're investing our time and our resources and our money into this podcast. And we always come back to, correct me if I'm wrong, Louise, but I feel like we always come back to, because we ask each other, if this isn't fun, like, why are we still doing it? Because that's one of our underlying things for doing the podcast from the beginning is this needs to be fun. This needs to be joyful.
Yeah. Joy is a metric.
Mm-hmm.
Joy is a metric. And I think one of the things that especially in the early stage, what I hear in your journey, so I don't know that I hear early stage in this, by the way. But one of the things that I think happens in early in coaching, like that first year, maybe 2 years, is that people get so overwhelmed by the work it takes that then they get disconnected from the joy. And then they go, well, see, joy is a metric. I shouldn't be doing this. And what I wish more coaches would do who find themselves at that pivot point or that fork in the road would be to go, hold on a second. Is it that the work is no longer meaningful? The work of coaching is no longer meaningful to me? Or is it that I'm under-resourced and I need to be resourced? I need to figure out like what is my strategy to be able to essentially hold greater capacity? And how do I do that with respect to my nervous system and not just being like a hustle? And given what you all are talking about, you haven't said the name of your podcast yet. So I'm going to say it, Empowered and Embodied, because everything you're talking about is empowered and embodied. And a moment ago, when I said, I don't see you two at early stage, I say that from the place of, if we think of the building of a company as moving in stages, I see that weekend that you two got together as being like a company all hands retreat where you're sitting down and you're revisiting the values and the mission that was originally there. For the listeners, they're both nodding.
And giant ads with like mission, vision, that like it was truly all there. Yeah.
Yes. And that's a game changer. And I will just share with all transparency, I started my coaching business in 2006. I certainly did sit down and do things to try to strategize for my business. But I will say that the change, the defining fork in the road for me was actually really in, I would say 2018, somewhere around there. And that was when it's like, my whole business now runs off of an annual roadmap in which then I work backwards and go, what do I want to do each quarter? And similar to what you guys are describing, how does it tie into values? It's not just about, I would like to hit these numbers with, I tend not to even make goals about like what follower count I could get, because the algorithms are so polluted at this point that it's like, I could work really, really hard and still not hit that. And it wouldn't be reflective of the effort or the passion I put into it. But nonetheless, like a values and embodied and empowered approach that combines with strategy. And that is what mature businesses do. And that's what I hear the two of you doing.
Yeah, I think, for me, when I started my business, I'm an accidental entrepreneur. Like, I had no plans. I have no one in my life at the time that had started their own business. I didn't even know what it meant. And so being a coach was like, yeah, I'll just hang a shingle outside my house. Apparently, this is what you do. And people will come and find me. And I love coaching and I'm really good at it. And people are going to know that. And it's like, that's great. That's a great coaching, right? To go into that saying like, this is what I love to do. And I'm going to make sure I'm really good at it with my training and all of those things. And to be very honest and realistic, building a business is a whole other like career. Like, we're doing two things at the same time. We're holding two things at the same time, building our coaching skill set and being really great at that, and trying to figure out how to build a business. And I think we slam them together too often to say, well, I'm going to build this independent coaching business and it's all going to work out magically. And it's not at all. I think it's two different skill sets sometimes that we need. We have to be putting on our hats. We have to be working in the business sometimes, and we have to be working on the business sometimes. And we have to be able to do that switch. And for me, it was life-changing and business-changing when I actually changed the name of my company from my name to Pivoting Point. It helped me make that very, very clear distinction of when am I Louise the coach, and when am I Louise the CEO of Pivoting Point?
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Oh my gosh. Last question as we start to wrap it up. What are some things that are on the horizon for you two? So, you've done this process of planning before. What is the vision currently? knowing that it's an evolving vision?
Right now, we're getting the vision is getting us to our 200th episode. So that will be coming out in April. So we already have it mapped out, and we're planning something very big and very special for our 200th that involves essentially everybody who has ever been on the show. And yeah, so we're doing a really, we're hoping that's the plan. We're working on the plan.
That's like a lot.
It's a lot.
Schedules to coordinate.
Yeah. And so that's the big thing that we're planning right now. And so as we're recording this at the beginning of November, that will be mid to late April. And beyond that, we're also starting to talk about what iteration it takes coming in later in 2026. So a little secret is that I have my own personal podcast coming out as well. So we're also, and like different things with both of our businesses. And so we're both in different phases than we were. And so what do we want it to look like, and how do we want it to evolve so that it continues to bring us the joy and serve people in the world, and be this beautiful vehicle that it has been for so many different growth spaces for both of us.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah. And we're doing like all kinds of things behind the scenes too that make things different as well. Like through our podcast history, sometimes it's lives that we've turned into a podcast. Other times it's recorded episodes. Some are longer, some are shorter, some are the two of us, the one of us with others and not with others. Like there's all of these things and all of this variety that keep it interesting, but also keep us experimenting with what feels good and what works for us and for our guests and for our listener too. And so just because we have that event horizon doesn't mean we're not tweaking in the background either. We're trying all kinds of things that are out there, all kinds of different platforms and stuff to keep things, I don't know, interesting maybe, but exciting as well.
Aligned.
Aligned. Yeah.
Aligned. Yes.
Yeah.
And expansive.
Mm-hmm.
And connected.
Yeah.
Which that's my little inside joke, because we were talking about our words that for what we're bringing to you today right before I hit record. So yeah. All right. Well, it has been such a pleasure to have you both here. Thank you so much for sharing about your journey. I of course will make links and things like that available in the bio. And it will be so exciting to see what you have rolling out in the year ahead. So thank you so much for being a guest today, or two guests today.
Thanks for having us. It was so much fun.
Thanks a lot, Kate.
All right, that's it for today's episode. Thank you so much for listening. Before you go, would you help us out and take a moment to give us a rating in iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you're listening? It really helps us get the word out to other listeners. And before you go today, would you like free resources to support your coaching journey? Whether you're considering becoming a coach or you want advanced coach skills training, access our coaching resource library at teamclcc.com. Again, that's teamclcc.com. Can't wait to connect with you. And again, thanks for listening.